The air in the Cook County Courthouse was thick with the scent of old paper and bitter endings. James Porter, a man who built an empire from scratch, sat with the casual confidence of a king. Beside him, his beautiful, much younger mistress Brielle squeezed his hand. He was here to finalize the disposal of his 20-year marriage, a simple transaction, he thought. He expected his ex-wife Kylie to walk in, hunched and broken, a relic of a past he was eager to erase. But when the courtroom doors opened, the woman who entered wasn't a ghost. She was a force of nature, poised and radiating a power that silenced the room. He expected tears and pleas. He got a titan in a tailored suit. And in that moment, James Porter, the millionaire who thought he had it all, began to understand that he wasn't just losing a wife. He was about to lose everything. James Porter checked his watch, a Patek Philippe Calatrava, a subtle nod to his immense success. It was 9:02 a.m., 2 minutes late. He sighed a theatrical puff of air, meant to convey his impatience to his lawyer, Garrett Sloane. Sloane, a man whose ambition was only matched by the price of his suits, gave a reassuring nod. "Don't worry, James," Sloane murmured, his voice a low, confident hum. "It's a common tactic. She's trying to get under your skin. Let her. The judge sees it for what it is, desperation." James smirked. Desperation. Yes, that sounded right. That's what Kylie should be feeling. He glanced at Brielle Tanner, the woman for whom he'd upended his life. She was flawless, a 26-year-old masterpiece of modern beauty. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup immaculate, and her tight-fitting dress was designed to command attention. She looked like the future. She was his future. She leaned in her perfume, a cloud of expensive florals. "Is she always this dramatic?" Brielle whispered, her voice a little too loud, a little too dismissive. "Only when she's not getting her way," James replied, enjoying the performance. He was the victor here. He had the power, the money, the youth, and beauty on his arm. Kylie had what? A sprawling, empty house in Lincoln Park he was graciously letting her keep until the settlement, 2 confused children, and 20 years of memories that he was about to officially devalue. He had offered her a generous settlement, or so he told everyone. $10 million. It sounded impressive, but it was less than 2% of his net worth. His company, Apex Solutions, a leader in logistics software, was valued at over $600 million. $10 million was a rounding error, a nuisance fee to make her go away quietly. But she had refused. She and her small-time lawyer had the audacity to counter, claiming half. Half. As if she'd had anything to do with the grueling 17-hour days, the high-stakes negotiations, the relentless innovation that had built Apex. She had been a wife, a good one once. She ran the house, organized the fundraisers, raised their children. Leo and Sophie. She was the quiet, stable foundation upon which he had built his towering success. But foundations are meant to be unseen, unheard. Over the years, her stability had started to feel like stagnation. Her quiet support felt like a lack of ambition. When he met Brielle, a marketing intern at his company, it was like breathing fresh air after being in a stuffy room for 2 decades. Brielle was vibrant, exciting. She saw him not as a husband and father, but as James Porter, the visionary, the titan of industry. She mirrored his ambition, his hunger. Leaving Kylie was in his mind a logical business decision. He was upgrading, divesting from a depreciating asset. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. A murmur rippled through the small gallery, mostly comprised of court reporters sniffing out a high-profile divorce. James straightened his tie, preparing his face into a mask of bored pity. But the woman who walked in shattered his expectations. This was not the Kylie he had left 8 months ago. The woman he'd last seen had been hollow-eyed, her face pale and tear-streaked, wrapped in a shapeless cardigan that seemed to absorb all the light around her. She had looked broken, defeated. The woman striding down the aisle now was electric. Her mousy brown hair was gone, replaced by a sharp, dark auburn bob that framed a face that was no longer soft with sorrow, but angular with determination. The tired lines around her eyes seemed to have been etched away, replaced by a focused, intelligent gleam. She wore a deep navy blue pantsuit, tailored to perfection, that spoke not of wealth but of power. She wasn't leaning on her lawyer Audrey Wallace for support. She was walking beside her as an equal. Her eyes, a cool, clear grey, scanned the room before landing on him. There was no flicker of pain, no hint of nostalgia. It was the look a CEO gives a minor line item on a budget report before striking it through. Cold. Analytical. Final. James felt a strange, unwelcome jolt in his chest. It wasn't love or regret. It was unease. The kind of feeling he got right before a competitor made an unexpected move in the market. Brielle shifted beside him. "Wow." She breathed a note of something sharp in her voice. She cleaned up. It was meant to be a catty remark, but it landed flat. This was more than cleaning up. This was a metamorphosis. Kylie and Miss Wallace took their seats at the opposing table. Kylie placed a sleek leather briefcase on the table and opened it with a quiet click. She didn't look at him again. She was focused, conversing in low tones with her lawyer, her posture ramrod straight. The victim he had prepared to face had vanished. In her place was a stranger, a formidable opponent he didn't recognize. "All rise," the bailiff called out, as Judge Henrietta Miller entered, a stern woman with a reputation for suffering no fools. The proceedings began. Garrett Sloan was up first, his voice smooth and practiced as he painted a picture of James's generosity and Kylie's supposed greed. "Your Honor," Sloan began, "Mr. Porter is a self-made man. Through sheer force of will and genius, he built Apex Solutions from a garage startup into a global powerhouse. His wife, Mrs. Horton Porter, he used her full name as a subtle jab. A reminder of what she was losing was a supportive homemaker, and for that, Mr. Porter is deeply grateful. He has offered her a settlement of $10 million a sum that would allow her to live in extreme comfort for the rest of her life. Yet she demands half of a company she never set foot in, half of a fortune she did nothing to build. This is not about fairness, Your Honor. This is about bitter, punitive greed." James watched Kylie's face for a reaction. Nothing. She just sat there, her hands folded calmly on the table in front of her. When it was Audrey Wallace's turn, she rose slowly. She was an older woman, less flashy than Sloan, but her presence filled the room with a quiet authority. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and steady. "Mr. Sloan paints a compelling picture of a lone genius and his supportive but uninvolved wife. It's a classic story. It is also in this case a complete and utter fiction." Sloan scoffed. "Objection. Counsel is being theatrical." "Overruled," Judge Miller said, her eyes fixed on Wallace. "Continue, Ms. Wallace, but get to the point." "The point, Your Honor," Wallace said, turning slightly to look directly at James, "is that my client is not asking for half of Mr. Porter's company. James felt a surge of triumph. She was caving. The pressure had gotten to her. He exchanged a smug glance with Sloane. Wallace let the statement hang in the air for a moment before continuing. She is demanding a 75% controlling interest. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Sloane shot to his feet, his face red. Your Honor, this is outrageous. On what possible grounds could she make such a ludicrous claim? Judge Miller banged her gavel. Order Ms. Wallace, explain yourself immediately, or I will hold you in contempt. Audrey Wallace smiled a thin, dangerous smile. With pleasure, Your Honor. We have grounds. The grounds are that Kylie Horton Porter didn't just support the man who built Apex Solutions. She paused, letting her words land with the force of a physical blow. She is the architect who designed it. 21 years ago, James Porter and Kylie Horton were inseparable. They met at Northwestern University, two bright minds buzzing with the possibilities of the nascent digital age. He was the charismatic business major, the one who could sell ice in a blizzard. She was the quiet genius in the computer science department. A coder so elegant and intuitive, her professors spoke about her in hushed, reverent tones. They fell in love over late-night study sessions, fueled by cheap coffee and shared dreams. James would talk about changing the world, about building something massive, a legacy. Kylie would listen, and then she would open her laptop and show him how it could actually be done. She wasn't just a dreamer. She was a builder. Her passion wasn't in the profit margins or the market share, but in the clean, logical perfection of the code itself. She saw it as a form of poetry. Her senior thesis project was a revolutionary piece of software she called Nexus. It was a dynamic logistics protocol, an algorithm that could analyze and optimize supply chains with an efficiency no one had ever thought possible. It was brilliant, groundbreaking, and intensely personal. She poured her soul into it. James was her biggest cheerleader. "Kate, this is it," he'd said, his eyes wide with genuine awe as she ran a simulation. "This isn't just a thesis. This is a billion-dollar idea." After graduation, life happened. They got married. James, armed with his business degree and Kylie's Nexus concept, started a small company in their garage. He called it Apex Solutions. Kylie was pregnant with their son, Leo, and she made a choice millions of women make. She chose to put her family first. She would support James, help him get the company off the ground, and then, once they were stable, she would return to her own career. But stable was a moving target. The company grew, and with it, the demands on James's time. The demands on her time grew too. Leo was a toddler, then Sophie was born. The house needed managing social obligations, for the business needed fulfilling. She was the one who remembered birthdays, scheduled doctor's appointments, attended parent-teacher conferences, and created a warm, loving home that served as James's sanctuary from the cutthroat world he was conquering. She was still involved in the company, but in a way that became increasingly invisible. In the early years, she was the one who stayed up all night debugging the original Nexus code when it crashed, refining the algorithm, making it faster, smarter. James would come to her with a problem, and she would solve it, sketching out solutions on a notepad while a baby slept in her lap. He was the face of the company. She was its silent, uncredited engine. As Apex grew, James hired teams of programmers. They built upon her foundation, but she was always the one he came to when they hit a wall. "Kate, the dev team, is stumped on the routing matrix. Could you just take a quick look?" he'd ask. And she would. She never asked for a title, a salary, or shares. She was his wife. They were a team. His success was her success, or so she believed. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. The quick looks became less frequent. He started talking about my team and my vision. The narrative of their garage startup slowly morphed into the legend of James Porter, the lone wolf genius. In interviews, he'd talk about the moment of inspiration for the core software, a moment that had in reality belonged entirely to her. She noticed it, but didn't challenge him. Challenging him would have felt like an accusation, a betrayal of their partnership. And she was happy. She loved her children. She loved the life they had built. She convinced herself the credit didn't matter. Then came Brielle Tanner. Kylie first saw her at the company's annual gala. She was one of dozens of bright young things buzzing around James, but there was a proprietary gleam in Brielle's eye that set her apart. She hung on his every word, her laughter a little too loud, her touch on his arm lingering a little too long. Kylie felt a cold prickle of unease, a feeling she dismissed as insecurity. James was a handsome, powerful man. Of course women would flirt with him. But then the little things started piling up. Late nights at the office became more frequent. Business trips on weekends. The scent of a strange perfume on his suit jacket. An emotional distance that felt like a chasm opening between them. He became critical, chipping away at her confidence. He'd comment on her clothes, her weight, her lack of killer instinct. "You've gotten comfortable, Kate," he told her one night after she asked why he was home so late. "The world is moving fast, and you're just standing still." The confrontation happened on a rainy Tuesday in April. He had left his phone on the nightstand while he showered. A message lit up the screen. It was from Brielle. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you. J." The J was for James, of course. Kylie felt the world tilt on its axis. The air rushed out of her lungs. 20 years of trust, of partnership, of shared history, all of it incinerated by a single text message. She confronted him when he came out of the bathroom, a towel around his waist. She held up the phone, her hand trembling. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "Who is she, James?" He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. There was a flicker of annoyance, then a cold resignation. He saw his chance, and he took it. "Her name is Brielle," he said, as if discussing a business matter. "Kate, this has been coming for a long time. We've grown apart. I'm not the man you married, and you're not the woman I need anymore. I want a divorce." The words were like bullets. He spoke of division of assets, of custody arrangements for the children, all with the detached efficiency of a corporate restructuring. He told her she would be well taken care of. He was casting her off, and he expected her to be grateful for the severance package. That night, after he packed a bag and left for his new life, Kylie fell apart. She wept until she was empty, a raw, primal grief for the man she had loved and the life she had lost. But as the sun rose on her new, shattered reality, something else began to rise from the ashes of her sorrow, a cold, hard fury. He hadn't just broken their vows. He had erased her. He had taken her work, her intellect, her contribution, and claimed it as his own. He had built his kingdom on her foundation, and then declared her a squatter. For 2 weeks, she did nothing but think. She sifted through 20 years of memories, not with nostalgia, but with the precision of a forensic accountant. She remembered every late-night coding session, every problem solved, every breakthrough she had handed him. And she started to gather evidence. She went up to the attic, to the boxes of old university files she could never bring herself to throw away. And there it was, a dusty external hard drive. On it was the original time-stamped source code for Nexus, her senior thesis. Her digital signature was embedded in every line. She found old notebooks filled with diagrams and flowcharts in her handwriting. She unearthed early emails between her and James, where he praised her brilliant algorithm and asked for her help in turning your project into a business. The narrative he had spent years crafting the myth of the lone genius was a lie. And she had the receipts. She hired Audrey Wallace, a lawyer known not for flashy courtroom theatrics, but for her meticulous, relentless preparation. For months, they worked in Accra. Kylie, the forgotten homemaker, rediscovered the brilliant analyst she had always been. She didn't just want a fair settlement. She didn't just want revenge. She wanted the truth. She wanted what was rightfully hers. So when she walked into that courtroom, it wasn't as Kylie Porter, the scorned wife. It was as Kylie Horton, the creator, the architect, and she wasn't there to ask for scraps from the table. She was there to claim the entire kingdom. The silence in the courtroom following Audrey Wallace's declaration was so profound it felt like a physical weight. James stared, his mind struggling to process the words. 75% architect. It sounded like nonsense, the ravings of a desperate woman. He looked at Garrett Sloane, expecting him to laugh it off, to dismantle the absurdity with a single cutting objection. But Sloane wasn't laughing. A flicker of professional concern, an emotion James had never seen on the man's face before, crossed his features. He knew Audrey Wallace by reputation. She wasn't one for bluffs. "Ms. Wallace," Judge Miller said, her voice dangerously low, "you've made an extraordinary claim. You will now substantiate it. No more theatrics." "Of course, Your Honor," Wallace replied calmly. She turned to Kylie, who opened her briefcase and produced a thick binder, handing it to the bailiff to be submitted as evidence. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A. This binder contains copies of email correspondence between my client and Mr. Porter, dating from 2003 to 2008. James's blood ran cold. 2003. The very beginning. What emails? Wallace continued, her voice narrating the evidence as the judge began to flip through the pages. You will find dozens of emails in which Mr. Porter refers to the core software of his company, not as Apex, but as Nexus, the name my client gave her senior thesis project at Northwestern University. For example, she said, picking up her own copy, an email from Mr. Porter dated October 14, 2003. He writes, and I quote, "Kate, your Nexus code is pure genius. I've run the simulations like you showed me. We're going to change the world with this. Your project is going to make us rich." James felt a lurch in his stomach. He remembered that email. He remembered the unadulterated excitement, the feeling of being on the cusp of something huge. He also remembered how over time the we had become I, and your project had become my company. Sloane finally found his voice. "Objection, Your Honor. Old emails prove nothing more than a supportive wife taking an interest in her husband's work. It was a collaborative atmosphere. A collaborative atmosphere where one partner gets $1 billion company and the other gets a request for divorce via text message." Wallace shot back, her voice dripping with irony. "I think not. Furthermore, Your Honor, we have Exhibit B." Another item emerged from Kylie's briefcase. It was an old silver external hard drive with a faded university sticker on it. "This," Wallace announced, holding it up, "is a hard drive belonging to my client, last accessed in May of 2003. On it, we have the complete time-stamped and digitally signed source code for the Nexus Logistics Protocol." a source code that, when compared to the foundational code of Apex Solutions' flagship software, is a 94% match. Our forensic analysis also included confirms its authenticity and creation date. Mr. Porter didn't found Apex Solutions on an idea he had in a garage. He founded it on a fully formed, brilliant piece of software his wife had already created. The courtroom was buzzing. Reporters were scribbling furiously. James felt the blood drain from his face. He looked over at Brielle. Her perfect smile was gone, replaced by a tight, anxious line. Her hand, which had been resting on his thigh, had withdrawn. "This is insane," James hissed at Sloane. "She helped a little at the beginning, that's all. She gave me the idea, sure, but I built it. I'm the one who secured the funding, hired the people, made the deals. Did you ever formally license the code from her?" Sloane asked, his voice a tense whisper. "Was there a contract? Did you buy the intellectual property?" "Buy it from my own wife?" James scoffed, but even as he said it, he knew how weak it sounded. He had never seen it as her IP. Once they were married, it was theirs. And what was theirs was, by his logic, his to control. Judge Miller was now looking at him, her expression unreadable but intensely focused. "Mr. Porter," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, "is it your testimony that you developed the foundational code for Apex Solutions yourself?" This was it, a critical moment. He had told this lie for so long to investors, to journalists, to himself, that it had become his truth. Admitting anything else would be catastrophic. "Yes, Your Honor," James said, forcing a confidence he didn't feel. "I did. My wife was a sounding board, as any spouse would be, but the work, the architecture, the final product, that was all mine." Kylie didn't flinch. She just looked at her lawyer and gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "In that case, Your Honor," Audrey Wallace said, "we would like to call our first witness to the stand. We call Mr. Albert Keane." James's heart stopped. Albert Keane. Their old professor from Northwestern, the head of the computer science department, a man revered in the tech community. He was Kylie's thesis advisor, a frail-looking man with a sharp mind and spectacles perched on his nose, was sworn in. Wallace approached him gently. "Professor Keane, thank you for being here. Could you please tell the court about a student you advised in 2003 named Kylie Horton?" Keane smiled fondly. "Kate, one of the most gifted programmers I've ever taught. Her mind for logic, for system architecture. It was truly remarkable. A generational talent." "And do you recall her senior thesis project?" Wallace asked. "Vividly," Keane said. "It was called Nexus. Frankly, it was postdoctoral level work. It was a paradigm shift in logistical theory. I've never seen anything like it before or since. I urged her to patent it, to pursue it. I told her it would be revolutionary." "And did she?" "No," Keane said, his expression clouding slightly. "She met a young business student, James Porter. She told me they were going to start a company together based on her project. She was very much in love. She said they would build it as a team." Wallace let the word team hang in the air. "Professor, have you ever had occasion to examine the software sold by the company Apex Solutions?" "I have," Keane confirmed. "And in your expert opinion, what is the relationship between Apex software and the Nexus project you advised Kylie on 20 years ago?" Professor Keane adjusted his glasses and looked directly at the judge. "Relationship, madame. It's not a relationship. It's the same thing. Polished, expanded, commercialized, yes. But the core architecture, the fundamental genius of it, that is without any question the work of Kylie Horton. Garrett Sloane attempted a cross-examination, but he couldn't lay a glove on the old professor, whose technical expertise and clear admiration for Kylie's work were unshakable. As Professor Keane stepped down, James felt a wave of nausea. The walls were closing in. He had built his identity, his entire sense of self-worth, on being the visionary behind Apex. That identity was now being systematically dismantled in front of a captivated audience. And Kylie just sat there, her composure absolute. This wasn't a desperate emotional ploy. This was a calculated strategic demolition. He had mistaken her quiet grief for weakness, her silence for surrender. He had been a fool. He had underestimated her just as he had for the last 20 years. Judge Miller looked from Kylie to James, her gaze lingering on him for a moment too long. "We will take a short recess," she announced, her voice grim. As people began to file out, James turned to Brielle, looking for comfort, for an ally. But the look on her face was not one of sympathy. It was one of cold, hard calculation. She was looking at him the same way he had looked at Kylie's $10 million settlement as a depreciating asset. During the recess, the atmosphere in the hallway outside the courtroom was electric with tension. James's corner felt like a besieged fortress. Garrett Sloane was pacing his face, a mask of fury and disbelief, muttering into his phone to his legal team. "Find something, anything. A paper trail, a prenup draft. Anything that shows shared intent or transfer of What do you mean there isn't one?" he snarled before snapping the phone shut. James felt a prickle of sweat on his brow. He tried to catch Brielle's eye to give her a reassuring smile, but she was absorbed in her own phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. There was a frantic energy about her he hadn't seen before. "Brielle," he said, his voice strained. "It's a shakedown, a desperate lie. We'll fight it." She looked up, her blue eyes wide, but not with fear for him. It was a different kind of fear. "A lie, James?" That old professor seemed pretty convinced. "They have the source code. Did you really think she was just going to walk away with a pity check?" Her tone was sharp, accusatory. The "we" she had so easily used before was gone. It was now "you." "I built that company," he insisted, his voice rising. "Her code was a starting point, a blueprint. You don't give the architect credit for every brick laid in a skyscraper." "Maybe not," Brielle countered, slipping her phone into her purse with a decisive snap. "But you also don't get to own the skyscraper if you stole the blueprint." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "I need some air." She walked away without a backward glance, her heels clicking an angry rhythm on the marble floor. James watched her go, a knot of dread tightening in his gut. The woman he had blown up his life for, the one who was supposed to be his glittering prize, was looking at him like a bad investment. When court resumed, Audrey Wallace was even more relentless. She presented financial records showing how, for the first 3 years of Apex Solutions' existence, Kylie's small inheritance from her grandmother was the sole source of funding for the family, and the business paying for the servers, the business registration, everything. She had not only provided the intellectual capital, but the initial financial capital as well. Then Wallace moved from the past to the present. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Porter has painted my client as being out of touch with the business world. He stated in his deposition that she hasn't had a real job in 20 years. He believes her to be incapable of running a lemonade stand, let alone a multi-million-dollar tech firm." "Objection," Sloane said wearily. "Relevance." "It is highly relevant to the future of the company whose ownership we are debating," Wallace countered. Judge Miller waved her on. For the past 8 months since Mr. Porter abandoned his family, my client has not been idle. She has not been, as Mr. Porter's legal team so crudely put it, languishing. She has been preparing. Your Honor, we would like to present Exhibit D. This time, what was presented was not a dusty relic from the past, but a sleek modern business portfolio. For the past 6 months, Wallace announced, Kylie Horton Porter has been the founder and CEO of a new logistics software company, Phoenix Innovations. Working with a small private team, she has developed a new platform from the ground up, one that makes the current Apex software obsolete. James actually laughed, a short, incredulous bark. Obsolete Phoenix Innovations. I've never even heard of it. My company is the industry standard. This is a joke. Is it Mr. Porter? Wallace asked, turning to face him. Then perhaps you can explain why 3 weeks ago, Northgate Haulage, one of the largest shipping firms in the Midwest and a client of Apex for the last decade, abruptly cancelled their 7-year, $80 million renewal contract with you. James froze. The Northgate deal collapsing had been a massive, inexplicable blow. His sales team had been baffled. Northgate had simply said they were moving in a new direction. And perhaps you can explain. Wallace continued her voice, like a hammer striking an anvil. Why yesterday morning an official bid was made to acquire the entirety of European logistics giant OmniCorp, a company Apex Solutions has been trying to acquire for 5 years, by a new well-funded American entity called Phoenix Innovations. The blood rushed from James's head. He felt dizzy. OmniCorp was his holy grail, the key to global domination. He had been whining and dining their board for years. For Kylie to swoop in, it was impossible. Where would she get that kind of capital, that kind of leverage, Your Honor? Wallace said, driving the final nail in. My client isn't just the original architect of Apex. She has proven herself to be its future. She has out-innovated it, out-maneuvered it, and is poised to overtake it. Giving her control of Apex isn't just an act of justice for the past. It is the most logical business decision for its future. She created the foundation, and she has now built a better version of the skyscraper next door. The question is, which one will this court recognize? James was speechless. He stared at Kylie. The quiet woman who used to organize his sock drawer and proofread his emails had been playing 3-dimensional chess while he was playing checkers. The 8 months he had spent in a blissful haze with Brielle Kylie had spent sharpening a blade, and she had just plunged it into the heart of his empire. As if on cue, his phone, which Sloane had insisted he put on silent, buzzed violently in his pocket. Then again, and again. He glanced down at the screen. A dozen frantic texts from his CFO, his head of sales, his board chairman. Northgate is gone. They signed with a Phoenix. Who are they, James? The OmniCorp deal is dead. They've accepted another offer. Market is panicking. Stock is starting to slide. Call me now. It was all real. While he was sitting here fighting to keep a fraction of his company from her, she was outflanking his entire operation. He looked up from his phone, his eyes wild with panic, and met Kylie's calm, grey gaze from across the courtroom. There was no triumph in her eyes, no glee, just a chilling, resolute finality. It was the look of a queen checkmating a pawn. Suddenly, another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The strange phone call he'd received a month ago from a headhunter asking if he knew any top-level programmers from Apex who might be looking for a new challenge. The odd resignation of 2 of his best senior developers last week for personal reasons. She hadn't just built a new company. She was poaching his talent. She was gutting him from the inside out. He felt Sloane's hand on his shoulder. "James." His lawyer whispered, his own professional composure completely shattered. "What is going on? Who is she?" James could only shake his head, the full, terrifying scope of his miscalculation crashing down on him. He had thought he was divorcing a homemaker. He had been at war with an empress. The judge called for the day's final recess before closing arguments, and the courtroom emptied in a chaotic flurry. James felt like a man in a dream, the world moving around him in a distorted blur. His entire reality had been upended in the space of a few hours. He wasn't the titan of industry. He was a fraud. He wasn't the visionary. He was a thief. He wasn't the one in control. He was the one being played. He stumbled out into the hallway, desperate to find Brielle, to find one solid thing to hold on to in the wreckage. He spotted her near the elevators, talking animatedly on her phone. He strode towards her, a torrent of explanations and accusations warring in his mind. As he got closer, he could hear her voice, low and urgent. "No. I'm telling you it's a disaster. The whole company is built on a lie. Don't be stupid, of course I have it. I forwarded everything to a private account weeks ago. The financials, the client lists the internal projections for Q4. Yes, everything. He's about to be wiped out. This is our chance to move." James stopped dead in his tracks. Our chance. Who was she talking to? Brielle laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Don't worry about James. He's too arrogant to ever suspect a thing. He thinks I'm just some pretty distraction. He has no idea. Okay, I'll call you back after it's all over. We need to be ready to short the stock the second the verdict is public." She hung up and turned, her face colliding with the sight of him standing there, his expression a mixture of horror and fury. The color drained from her cheeks. For a moment she was speechless, caught. "James," she stammered, "I was just talking to my mother." "Your mother is interested in shorting Apex stock?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Your mother wants the client lists. Who were you talking to, Brielle?" Her composure cracked, replaced by a defensive sneer. "What does it matter to you? You're finished anyway. Did you really think I was going to stick around to watch you go down?" "I'm not Kylie. I don't do for richer or for poorer. I signed up for the rich part." "You were stealing from me," he whispered, the realization another physical blow. "All this time, I was securing my future," she snapped, "the same way you did. You built your career on her work, and I was building my exit strategy on yours. It's just business, James. You of all people should understand that. You taught me the game." She tried to push past him, but he grabbed her arm. "Who?" he demanded. "Who were you talking to?" Her eyes flashed with malicious glee. "You really want to know it was Kyle Weston?" The name hit him like a punch to the gut. Kyle Weston, the CEO of their biggest rival, a man James had personally and publicly humiliated in a bidding war 2 years prior. He had been poaching James's staff, undercutting his prices, and it turned out sleeping with his mistress while she funneled him proprietary company data. The betrayal was so absolute, so multi-layered, it was almost poetic. He had traded a woman of substance who had secretly built his kingdom for a beautiful viper who was secretly selling it to his enemies. He had thrown away gold for glitter, and the glitter, it turned out, was laced with poison. He let go of her arm, disgusted. She looked at him with nothing but contempt. "You know, for a guy who thinks he's a genius," she said, adjusting the sleeve of her dress. "You are the biggest fool I have ever met. You had a woman who was a genuine powerhouse, a true partner, and you threw her away because she didn't look good enough in a cocktail dress at your boring fundraisers. You deserve everything that's coming to you." With that, she turned and walked to the elevator, pressing the button. She didn't look back. The doors slid open. She stepped inside and was gone. James stood alone in the hallway, the echoes of her words ringing in his ears. He was completely and utterly alone. His lawyer was in damage control. His mistress was a corporate spy. And his wife, his ex-wife, was a stranger who held his entire life in her hands. He thought of Leo and Sophie. He had told them the divorce was for the best, that it would make everyone happier. He saw now the confusion and pain in their eyes that he had dismissed as childish melodrama. He had broken their home, their family, their trust, all for a woman who was now probably negotiating the price of his company's secrets with his worst enemy. The regret was a physical thing, a crushing weight on his chest that made it hard to breathe. It wasn't just about the money or the company anymore. It was about the catastrophic failure of his own character. He had systematically dismantled every good thing in his life in pursuit of a hollow, egotistical fantasy. The bailiff's voice called from the doorway, "Court is back in session." James turned and walked back into the courtroom, not as a king returning to his throne, but as a condemned man walking to the gallows. He took his seat. The chair felt cold and hard. He glanced across the room at Kylie. For the first time, he didn't see an adversary. He saw the life he could have had, the partner he should have cherished. He saw everything he had lost, and he knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that he was never, ever getting it back. When closing arguments began, the outcome already felt like a foregone conclusion. The air in the courtroom had shifted. The initial perception of a greedy ex-wife trying to fleece her successful husband had evaporated, replaced by the stark reality of a monumental injustice about to be corrected. Garrett Sloane did his best, but his arguments were hollow, his confidence shattered. He spoke of James's sweat equity, of the years he had spent building the business side of the company. He tried to frame Kylie's secret development of Phoenix Innovations as a vindictive, calculated act of sabotage rather than a brilliant business move. But his words lacked conviction. He was a lawyer defending a client whose foundation had been proven to be fraudulent. He was arguing for the rights of a king who had been revealed to have stolen his crown. When Audrey Wallace rose for her final statement, she did not raise her voice. She spoke with a quiet, powerful gravity. "Your Honor," she began. "For 20 years, Kylie Horton Porter worked without a title, without a salary, and without recognition. She was the chief architect, the lead programmer, the head of R&D, and the primary investor in what became Apex Solutions. In return for her genius and her sacrifice, she was discarded. Mr. Porter didn't just leave his wife. He attempted to erase his partner." She gestured toward James. "This man claims to be a builder, but what he truly is a salesman. And the greatest product he ever sold was the myth of his own genius, a myth built entirely on the silent, uncredited labor of the woman sitting before you today." She then turned her attention to the future. "But this case is no longer just about rectifying a past wrong. It is about the stewardship of a major corporation. In the past few hours, the market has learned a fraction of what this court now knows. Apex Solutions stock has plummeted 28% since we recess it. Confidence in Mr. Porter's leadership is irrevocably broken. Meanwhile, the whispers of Phoenix Innovations and its mysterious, brilliant founder are already causing a stir in the tech world. The choice before this court is simple, Wallace concluded. Do you leave this company in the hands of the man who lied about its creation and is now driving it into the ground? Or do you place it in the hands of the woman who conceived it, who has proven she can innovate beyond it, and who holds the only key to its future survival and success? Justice in this case is not just fair. It is also for the hundreds of employees and shareholders of Apex Solutions the only sound business decision. She sat down. The silence was absolute. Judge Miller removed her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at the stacks of evidence at the binders at the transcripts. She looked at James, then at Kylie. Her gaze lingered on Kylie for a long moment, a look of profound, almost weary respect in her eyes. I have heard the arguments. Judge Miller began, her voice resonating with authority. I have reviewed the extensive and compelling evidence presented by the plaintiff. In the matter of the divorce of Porter versus Horton Porter, the court finds the following. Every person in the room leaned forward. First, the court finds the evidence to be overwhelming and conclusive that the foundational intellectual property upon which Apex Solutions was built was the sole creation of Miss Kylie Horton Porter. Mr. Porter's subsequent commercialization of this IP without contract compensation or credit constitutes a gross and indefensible misappropriation. James felt his world shrinking to a single point of roaring noise in his ears. Therefore, the judge continued, the standard 50-50 division of marital assets is not applicable here. We are not dividing a shared asset, but rather restoring a stolen one. The court hereby orders a transfer of 60% of the shares and full controlling interest of Apex Solutions to Ms. Kylie Horton Porter, effective immediately. Gasps echoed through the room. 60%. Not the 75 she had asked for, but more than enough. It was a complete takeover. Furthermore, Judge Miller went on, her voice devoid of emotion. Mr. Porter will be allocated 20% of the company shares. The remaining 20% will be placed in a trust for their children, Leo and Sophie Porter, to be managed by Ms. Horton Porter until they reach the age of 25. So he was left with a minority stake in the company he once ruled, while she controlled not only her own shares, but their children's as well, giving her an unassailable 80% of the voting power. He was a figurehead, a ghost on his own board. As for spousal support, the judge said, looking directly at James, there will be none. The plaintiff is clearly more than capable of supporting herself. All other personal properties and assets are to be divided as per the initial agreement. This court is adjourned. The gavel struck wood with a deafening crack. It was over. Chaos erupted. Reporters shouted questions as they rushed for the doors. Garrett Sloane slumped in his chair, utterly defeated. James just sat there, paralyzed. Kylie stood up calm and composed. She shook her lawyer's hand and then turned her eyes, meeting his, across the now empty space between their tables. She walked towards him. For a wild, insane moment, he thought she might say something conciliatory, offer an olive branch. She stopped in front of him, and he stood up to face her. "Why, Kate?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why destroy me like this?" Her grey eyes, so clear and unwavering, held his. "You think this was about destroying you, James? You destroyed yourself. You did it the day you decided my only value was in the reflection of your success. You did it the day you chose a cheap fantasy over a real family. This wasn't about destruction. This was about reclamation. I just took back what was mine." With that, she turned and walked away, not looking back. He watched her go, a powerful, solitary figure, moving purposefully towards the doors, towards her new future, her new empire. As he stumbled out of the courthouse, minutes later he was mobbed by a frenzy of cameras and microphones. Mr. Porter, is it true your ex-wife created your software? What's your response to the stock collapse? Are the rumors of corporate espionage true, Mr. Porter? He pushed through them, his face a grim mask, and got into the back of his car. As it pulled away, he saw the headline already flashing on a news ticker on a nearby building: Porter Empire crumbles ex-wife, revealed as tech visionary. He had walked into court that morning, a king ready to banish his queen. He was leaving a pauper, stripped of his kingdom, his legacy and his honor, a footnote in the story of the brilliant woman he had once called his wife. The regret was no longer a weight, it was a void, and he knew he would spend the rest of his life falling into it. 6 months later, the name on the gleaming steel and glass skyscraper in Chicago's Fulton Market district had changed. The aggressive angular logo for Apex Solutions was gone, replaced by the elegant soaring emblem of a bird rising from flames, Phoenix Innovations. Inside the CEO's office, the view was spectacular, but Kylie Horton was not looking at the skyline. She was looking at a framed drawing on her desk, a colorful crayon-drawn picture of a smiling family. Sophie had made it for her. Next to it was a photo of a grinning Leo wearing a Phoenix Innovations t-shirt, standing next to her at the company's official launch party. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Taking control of Apex had been like wrestling an octopus, but she had been methodical. She merged its assets and staff with her leaner, more advanced Phoenix platform. She fired the sycophantic executives who had enabled James's worst impulses and promoted the talented engineers and developers he had overlooked, many of whom were women. The company culture shifted from one driven by ego to one driven by collaboration and innovation. The stock, after its initial freefall, had stabilized and was now climbing steadily, surpassing its previous highs under James's rule. Kylie Horton wasn't just a story. She was a success. Her life had found a new, better rhythm. She made it home for dinner every night. She helped Sophie with her math homework and listened to Leo practice for his driving test. The sprawling, empty house in Lincoln Park no longer felt empty. It felt like a home again, filled with laughter and the comfortable chaos of family. They were healing. James, meanwhile, had disappeared from public life after a disastrous attempt to form a new startup, which failed when no investor would touch him. He had sold off most of his remaining 20% stake in Phoenix just to cover his legal fees and mounting debts. He now lived in a small, modern condo, a nice place by any normal standard, but a prison compared to the life he once knew. He had tried to reach out. He sent emails, left voicemails. They were filled with remorse, with pleas for forgiveness, with talk of the good times. Kylie never responded. It wasn't out of spite. It was simply that the man who was sending those messages was a stranger to her now, a ghost from a life she no longer lived. There was nothing left to say. One crisp autumn afternoon, James was sitting in a cafe nursing a single cup of coffee when he saw her. Kylie was walking down the street with Leo and Sophie. They were laughing about something, their heads close together. Sophie was holding her mother's hand. Leo, now taller than Kylie, had a protective arm slung around her shoulder. They looked happy, whole, a perfect, self-contained unit. For a moment he felt a powerful urge to run out to say something. But what could he say? "I'm sorry I made a mistake." The words felt laughably inadequate. He had committed a crime not against the law, but against the heart, and for that there was no appeal. He watched as they disappeared into a bookstore, the bell above the door jingling merrily. He was left alone with his reflection in the cafe window, a man who had reached the apex of the world only to discover he had built it on the wrong mountain. He had traded his family for an illusion of power, his partner for a sycophant. He had chosen the mistress over the masterpiece. He finally understood the true nature of his loss. It wasn't the money, the company, or the fame. It was the easy laughter of his children, the quiet partnership of a shared life, the irreplaceable warmth of a family walking together on a sunny afternoon. He had had it all in his hands, and in his blindness, he had let it all slip away. And he knew, with the kind of soul-deep certainty that comes far too late, that he would be paying the price for the rest of his life. The story of James Porter and Kylie Horton is a dramatic, gut-wrenching reminder of what happens when we mistake glitter for gold. James had a kingdom, but he failed to recognize the queen who built it. He traded a lifetime of genuine partnership for a fleeting moment of ego, and the price was his entire world. This isn't just a tale of divorce. It's a story about value, respect, and the quiet strength of those who are underestimated. It shows us that true power isn't about the name on the building, but about the integrity of the person who laid the foundation. If Kylie's incredible journey from a silent partner to a triumphant CEO resonated with you, please hit that like button to show your support. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim your own narrative. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that are more dramatic than fiction. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for listening.